Okay, it is 6:05. My apologies for the late start. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for a moment of silence as we consider both those who've gone before us and the very somber day anniversary that comes tomorrow, September 11th. Thank you. Roll call, please. Excuse me.
Trustee Lewis. Here. Trustee Pines. Trustee Bushner.
Present.
Mayor Allen.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Here.
Trustee O'Malley and Trustee Patton are running late.
Slackers.
And Attorney Gilchrist.
If the recording's going to pick that up. So briefly, before we turn over to two presentations, in terms of announcements, we just have the one that we've been had on for a while. We are still looking for 2 more people to serve on the zoning board. So if you're interested, please speak with Marie, our village clerk. At this point, I want to pass it off to Ted from Barton & LaJudas. Barton & LaJudas is an engineering firm who is working on several grants with the village. This one I think is specific to Greenway, but we also are working with them on the Woods Brook CDBG grant that's happening outside the village with the town. Ted, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Pleasure to be in Hoosick Falls again, and thank you, trustees and mayor, for the opportunity to speak. As Mayor said, we do have a number of projects, and I'll try to be real quick. This won't take that long. First, in terms of the comprehensive plan and the land use inventory project, the next actions required are to have the comprehensive plan committee hearing. Another hearing would be required after that, and then Bob also told me, Bob Murphy, who's the project manager on that, mentioned that he would have a draft of the plan available by the end of this week for review, and then that would need to be posted for public review on the website. Okay. So following the committee hearing and then an actual village trustee board hearing, parts 1 and 2 of Seeger would be put together and then circulated, and then you have to refer the comp plan to the county planning office for their comments. So that's that project. On the Woods Brook project, I know, Mayor, you're going to have an update on the agenda. There are a bunch of seeker actions that are required. Some of the other things that I was told by our staff, the National Flood Insurance Prevention notice was to be published on the 29th with a comment period through the 5th. And then, I guess, just generally speaking, the seeker filing, or the finalized version of the neg deck should be ready for adoption in October, at the October meeting for that.
Okay.
So then on to kind of more fun stuff related to the Hoosick River Greenway. We're working on 2 projects, and I guess I'm talking about this one first. There's a 700-foot extension of the Hoosick River Greenway north to Sewer Plant Road that was funded under a Recreational Trails Program grant. We were told we need to put together a design report for this under the Recreational Trails Program. It's got to be in the hands of Parks by the end of this month. So we have a draft of that. I'm going to leave a couple copies with Vanessa and Brian on the way out here. Don't let me forget that. So a design report just generally describes the project and gives some information about it. Oh, Chief. Good. What we wound up finding when we first visited the site a couple of years ago when we were writing the grant application, there was a hill, heavily wooded hill between the trail corridor and the railroad, and that's gone, which kind of simplifies our job, but it also gives us another alternative route for the trail to kind of avoid putting the trail in the low spot of the land where potentially it could have erosion problems long-term, moisture problems. There's standing water there now. When we visited the site, you know, in the middle of August in hot weather, there's standing water, yeah. So this might be another alternative route. I know from speaking to the DPW superintendent, he has some concerns about how this meshes with the railroad plans. They're gonna put in an extra siding there, so.
We do have a survey map of this area
Yeah.
on file.
Good.
I think the belief initially was that we owned more toward the hill they removed, but when you look at the map again, we
Yeah.
actually own more toward the National Grid.
Side of it, yeah.
The stone wall is ours, and we own more on the east side of what's existing than we do the west side.
Okay, okay. So this, the
The railroad,
railroad is right here.
and the siding's gonna come
Like
straight
in
across,
here.
and there'll be another crossing on Sewer Plant Road,
Okay,
where it'll align with the former alignment of what was the railroad,
Yeah.
and now will begin. There'll be a double track crossing there,
Okay.
and then it'll come across and meet the main line.
okay, so I think one of the first things is we'll have to slide this
Yep.
over, and just kind of move the trail entry as much as we can. We did find some wetlands kind of right in the area where it enters into, but I think there's still room to do some movement of that trail right there. So basically what we'd be doing is creating this extension, formalizing it. A lot of people are still using this. There is signage for it already in place. Formalizing parking up here, putting some landscaping in. Want to talk to the railroad about what they're gonna need for safety. Our budget included some guide rail, timber guide rail, just to make a nice solid separation between the parking area and the railroad corridor. We also have a bunch of buffer plantings provided as well, as a way to kind of buffer the space between the railroad and the trail. And just based on what we saw in the field, it looks like existing, what's left is probably an 8-foot rise from the end of the trail, and then it slowly goes down to the elevation of the road. So that doesn't present any problems grade-wise for us. We would have to do a little bit of grading initially in this section here, but in general, we would just follow the length of the trail. When we first went out there, I thought there was some utility work going on there, but, and then I was talking to the DPW super about, can we coordinate that and have whoever's doing that work kind of grade things for us?
But then the railroad went through and.
Yeah, now I know it's a railroad, but maybe they can help in some way. So,
They actually they're usually not very cooperative, but with this, if it involves protecting their right-of-way
yeah,
from pedestrian and or other trespass, they generally are suddenly cooperative.
I would think so, yeah.
This is in their favor. You might be surprised they will actually
I
respond.
hope so.
But you have to make sure you frame it in that it's adjacent to your property, we want to protect your.
Yeah. Actually, we had a good experience contacting some folks at Metro North Railroad downstate.
Yeah, but they're nice.
I know.
This is Pan Am we're talking about.
Yeah, I know. So, I don't know who has contact information from someone from the railroad, but,
Probably
Actually, I think it's Ted.
Krug, right?
Yeah, it's actually Ted.
Yeah, we have
Ted
that.
can call Ted.
okay.
He
So-
actually gets back to you. He's their
Do you
engineer.
want me to forward an email? Or I can forward his
That'd be
email address?
perfect. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
So, as I said, there's a design report, there's some signatures that are needed, I'll leave copies so you guys can review it and let me know if you have any comments on it.
Okay.
For the purposes of the design report, we're gonna just show both alignments, this will be an alternative. This is the one we prefer, because it's up higher, it's gonna be subject to less, erosion, et cetera. And then this can all change after the design report is approved and after we get design approval. And the other question regarding this and the other project is, are we going to bid these and have them contractor installed, or is this something that can be partially done by town village forces or volunteers?
I think we had talked about Neil and volunteers, right?
thought, Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what we had talked about last.
Because Neil knows a lot of this the best,
Okay,
and that's probably where we'd rather, and also for the match portion of the grant, when Neil or the village does that, it can be applied to there's a match for this one too, right?
yes.
Yeah, because the
It's
southern one is 50/50, is this
This
70?
is 80/20.
80/20, okay.
Or 75/25, one of the two.
And it was in the,
Yeah. So the budget estimate on this is about in line with what we anticipated in the grant application.
Okay.
So that's good for this work anyways. We use like a contractor price, so if we put it out to bid, that's the pricing we use. If it was done by volunteers, there might be a little money left over, so we could do a little extra stuff on there, maybe planting wise, or, you know, road wants some kind of chain link fence or something. We can do that.
make them pay.
I totally agree with you.
If they
yeah.
want it, you can say, well, it's not in the grant, but we
It's not in
will
our
install
budget.
it for you if
It
you
is
purchase
not
it.
in our budget
Right.
at this time.
We will install it if you purchase it.
Yeah, true. Our
Vanessa, you
contract-
ready to get
yeah,
a
Exactly.
drill?
It's this new hair, I can do it.
Oh, good, we're in.
What is it?
My new hair will make me.
Oh, absolutely. So the other component of this grant application was an emergency rescue vehicle, which is looking like the quotes we're getting back are more expensive. And there's kind of a decision we have to make as to whether we want a trailer or they have this sort of, you know, like the back of a pickup truck kind of insert that has a little rescue pad and then as an actual companion seat on it, so the rescuer can sit in the back and watch the person. So there's two options there that we're, and I actually have some information about that, but I'll
Okay.
How far
scan it.
above the quote are they?
It's about, well, first, we got some quotes that are within range, and then we went to an actual special manufacturer that specializes in fire rescue equipment. Of course, they were $10,000 higher than everything else. So,
Okay.
you know, if we work things the right way, I mean, there may be enough money if this is gonna be volunteer effort to just go the extra yard. But I guess my planner told me that it's kind of a specialty item for, it can also be used for like brush fires and so on. So it's built for that kind of specialty.
Yeah, I think it was the idea too, was DPW could use it if they need to also
Exactly.
do work on the trail.
Yep, and that's the way we
Back in August.
actually
Down
wrote
here.
it up
Okay,
in
we
the
did
design
that.
report as well.
Okay.
All right, excellent. So then I'll need, once you guys have had a chance to review the report, if the mayor could sign it, and then we'll send it off on its way to Parks. Who's
Trying to do a Greenway meeting Monday the 23rd.
What's that?
Quickly
Monday
turn
the
it
23rd
around.
for Greenway meeting.
You have one?
Yeah, as long as we don't have a meeting then.
We won't.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right.
Reserve the room.
And the last correspondence with Parks, they acknowledged that
I'll be sure there's no.
that project would not be under construction until spring of 2020.
Shouldn't be.
So
Okay.
we're not under pressure to get out there with shovels and
That's good.
pickaxes and- But actually, you know, with some good beer from Brown.
Probably go a lot quicker.
Coke's a
Cover
really
yours,
good
guys.
crowd out
We
there.
work for beer.
No. Strike that.
Root beer.
So the other project is at Waterworks Road. This project is actual more advanced in design. I had 60%
5
of
p.m.
construction documents. We're at 75, maybe a little beyond 75 for this. This has quite a bit more work on it than we think can be afforded at this time. I can actually leave this full-size set of plans with you.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
actually, I'll just leave the whole board.
This grant was extended. What's our clock
It's, we're
running up?
we probably should get another extension. But I think if we submit these plans to them with the extension request, you
Yeah.
know, we'll
'Cause
be
we
in a
move
better
forward.
position than if we just ask for an extension.
Yeah, I think it was October, November, the duration of the
Yeah.
extension?
Yeah. I think
This grant's a decade old.
I think they put it just right out till the end of December, but
Okay.
generally, you're not
Am
gonna
I
get
in your way?
anything done.
No.
In winter,
Late
right.
November and December.
What's that?
This was the one that's about a decade old that was extended once, so we
Yeah.
wanna make sure we don't.
Yeah.
miss it.
But we're
Alright.
using the demolition of the waterworks as the match for this.
Yep.
Okay.
So that was
So-
super expensive.
Yeah.
Got it. And the hauling.
So, this is basically a construction set intended for a contractor. If this is gonna also be more of a volunteer village forces effort, it's gonna be a lot less expensive again. And we're essentially at 100% with what we have here for what you would need to do it in-house.
Okay.
We also have a spec book ready to go with all the specifications. I brought a copy of that with me since, I can leave it for you, we can assemble another one for myself. So, and this has a demolition plan which shows we're taking out all the debris from the old waterworks site. Erosion and sediment controls and some other typical details, but this is basically what we have in mind.
We'll clear the debris that's down there and reuse the cistern for
Yeah.
the.
So the thought was, reusing the old waterworks site for some overflow parking area. And, then we have this big vault. And I was standing there looking at it thinking, wow, cool stage. So we're going to propose filling it in with some sand or flowable concrete fill, capping it off and using it as some kind of stage for different performances. So this is kind of dual purpose space here. It can be used for overflow parking. It can also be used for sort of setting up for events. We're basically showing some gravel access ways, and then this would be some reinforced turf pavement. So it's actual grass pavement, just got some reinforcement so you can park on it without leaving tire prints. And then possibly in the future, some parking up here and maybe an additional couple of bays further to the south. The basic project would be to extend the road across the trail here. So we'd have a kind of formalized trail crossing, warning the trail users and the motorists about the crossing. And then sort of a roundabout cul-de-sac feature here where kayakers can come in, drop off and then park here. If these spaces are full, they'll have to come out and park here after they drop off.
Although we're hoping this is the takeout point, so they
Correct.
come and spend their money.
Exactly. I mean,
Because
There's-
generally go south beyond, or
The
north.
flats,
I mean.
right.
Yeah,
yeah,
but that's
Yeah.
why it's a good takeout point, because.
it
we-
is,
yeah, it's
and
in the
we
village.
actually, we were just gonna do one point, but it just feels like, and this has happened to me before, the kayak gets away from you and you're chasing it down the stream bank. Wouldn't it be great to have another spot further down, but this would be the primary takeout and put in spot. It's kind of formed nicely like a little indentation because of some rocks that collected, and then there's a
Yeah.
giant poplar tree there, so it'd be a really nice spot. And then we'd actually kind of reinforce it with some additional river stone. I prefer to use something more like a native river stone than getting these giant riprap that the DOT uses. The other features are some walkways. We also have this little spot that we looked at, Brian, that it's an erosion, a spot of erosion down the slope. So we looked at putting in some timber stairs there. And
Fishing
actually-
access, right?
Yeah, that would be fishing access. And actually, the entire frontage here, we sort of have some improvements related to fishing access in mind. There is a similar timber stairs for the kayak access on Cateros Creek off of Route 9.
I think you showed pictures of.
Yeah, I sent you pictures of that, yeah.
And they're made, like, if there's floodwaters, they'll flood, but they'll be probably
Yeah.
fine, but easy to replace if they're not.
It's probably, maybe the bottom couple would be in the flood
Mhm.
zone, but the rest of it's a little bit above, so that's good. And all of this would be flood-proof construction. we have these little features called lunkers, which are actual little hollows in the stream bank that are reinforced with rock that become refuge for fish. And it's actually a really nice way to, you know, enhance the fishing habitat along the shoreline. So we've got a couple of those proposed. Those can be simply constructed by volunteers as well. And there's some other resiliency measures along the shoreline. One of the big cost items that can be reduced is we've got a ton of planting in here. I had my landscape architect assistant do a quantity takeoff, and I was like,
There's a lot of what is the invasive,
yeah, it's the Japanese knotweed.
yep, which are hard to kill, hard to get rid of. And
Yes.
They're a big problem.
It is a big problem all over the place. I'm involved with a group in Albany. We're trying to kill them off around this pond, and it's a losing battle every time, but.
You basically have to come out and cut them down every year, again and again and again, until they,
It has like
20-foot
the
roots.
root
Yeah.
system that, you know, a small plant just goes forever.
Well, they also look like they are a major problem because they're choking out natural and
Correct.
native plants up and down waterfronts. If there's high
Yeah.
waters, it spreads them. They're actually a serious problem.
Yeah. And there have been a number of like integrated pest management
They have no
approaches,
natural, no
and nothing
predators.
has worked so far, but not even the strongest herbicides are totally
Yeah,
effective against
What's
it.
the one, what can they name of it? There's all the ambulance chaser commercials for it. Roundup.
Roundup.
Roundup
Yeah.
will even kill it.
Yeah.
People were injecting it with needles of Roundup and it did nothing.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
That's not
like
the way
ambulance chase.
glyphosate
Yeah.
works.
What was that?
That's not the way Roundup and glyphosate works.
No, but I mean, they were
Injecting it.
experimenting, trying to get it to the roots, like just in ways to kill it, and it wouldn't, no matter what
Well,
they did, they
it
couldn't.
really needs to go on the leaves.
Yes,
Because it's translaminar for the absorption.
but it wouldn't, even that wasn't doing it, so,
You
yeah.
can't, it's not
Plant
promoted.
Yep.
Plant guy.
But-
It's our honorary
Yeah.
plant
Well,
guy
you
over
get, yeah,
there.
so but they've even gone as far as trying experimenting with actually injecting them and no luck there either, so.
Yeah, and
Which is,
I think Davy.
they're hard to kill.
Some-
For our problem, Davy Trees is using like a systemic on them, so we're gonna see how that goes. But
Have they used any of the triazine group?
I don't know what they're using. We're sort of, we're like a little pilot project for DEC right now, so.
Triazine is like atrazine, like what they use on corn,
Ah,
which is a very strong, the only problem with the triazine group is it has a huge carryover. that you have to be
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah, it's along the riverfront, so I think that's
Yeah.
part of the, yep.
What,
Yeah.
at what point are we thinking of actually getting some of the work done, schedule-wise?
This, if it was gonna be done in-house, some of this work could be done this fall.
Okay.
Depends what Neil's willing to do, schedule-wise, right?
We tried to,
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what community service possibilities as well.
Yeah.
tried to set a lot of this up so that it could be done, you know, it could be an Eagle Scout project type of thing to do some of these things.
Okay.
Community service.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
The-
thinking.
There's two types of shoreline launch sites. One of them is just a bunch of timbers put together that would be slid in and dead manned into the slope. And then the other one is kind of a reinforcing mat that would be used along the slope of the creek. And it would just be like shoreline grasses, planted with shoreline grasses. So a heavy emphasis on plantings would be natural riverine planting
Do we have,
species.
do we have it figured in when the river gets much higher, because it fluctuates often when there's a lot of heavy rain?
We did propose some shoreline resiliency, using,
Well, these will float and move up, yeah, and stay attached.
Okay.
and right now it's kind of not very well protected up on the flat area. So that's why we proposed doing a massive planting of river grasses and sort of river shrubs that will just really stabilize the shoreline.
Okay.
And then right along the immediate shoreline, there were some other improvements. Let's see. this is actually what the lunkers look like in section. Just a little housing underneath below the water line.
That is really cool.
And then what we were talking about doing along the shoreline itself, there's always tow protection needed. So we have some riprap tow protection below the water line, and then up above would be these compost-filled socks, which are super effective. You can do stake plantings in them, or you can just kind of have them impregnated with seeds, and then shoreline grasses will grow right out of them and they'll disappear from view.
And you're leaving this so we can show that to the
Absolutely.
Greenway committee? Okay.
Yeah, and I can actually come on the 23rd too if you want.
I think we're looking at 5 p.m.
Okay,
So
that'd be
that's
awesome.
doable.
Early would be
Yeah.
great.
Is that good for you, Vanessa? And you're gonna put the Eastwood, right?
Said it was a Monday?
Yeah. Monday the 23rd, 5 p.m.
Great.
So any questions on that?
This
Word?
looks great, Ted. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Vision we
This is great.
worked on the last 2 years. And
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
It's gonna be really nice to see these come to fruition. It's
Yeah.
gonna add a lot to both sides of the Greenway, so that's excellent.
cool.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ted.
And then we'll email. I'll include you on the email for the
That
meeting.
sounds great.
So.
All right. So the other update I have is, or the other presentation rather, excuse me, is from Andrew Sterling. Andrew Sterling and Mark Sterling from Sterling Environmental Engineering have been assisting us.
One correction.
What's that?
No spawn.
Oh, did I what I say? Oh, jeez, I have Sterling here.
It's alright.
Jeez, I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry. The amount of times I have to look
What
up
was
your
it?
email to find your cell phone because I'm too lazy to program my phone. You think I'd remember Millspaw. It's Andrew Millspaw. We've been working with Andrew and his father Mark significantly on the sewer project when the situation came up with the need for hazardous mitigation. Sort of in a sense changing the plans and the approaches for the sewer work near the John Street site. And I invited Andrew Millspaw, not Sterling, to come and just sort of give the board and everyone sort of a brief explanation of what they've been doing related to the sewer project and a sort of a summary of where we are now. And that's going to lead into a bigger update on the sewer project and the fact that we have the bond resolution near the end of the meeting, and that's all going to work together. So, Andrew, thank you, sir, for coming.
Yep, not a problem. Yeah, I don't have a formal presentation, just giving an overview of the added environmental aspects to the sewer project because of the proximity to the John Street State Superfund site that has resulted in soil and groundwater contamination at that property. It's located up gradient of the sewer portion of the sewer project, and groundwater flows from that John Street site to the Hoosick River. Therefore, there's potential for contamination to be in the area of the sewer project. And as part of the base scope of work, when normal sewer project would go, when soil is excavated or water is encountered and pumped out, soil is either reused as part of the project, or it can be taken away as just construction and demolition debris and used elsewhere. And water is typically just pumped through a filter bag to remove any soil particles and pumped into the storm sewer or out into the river. When there's the environmental component of that, with contaminated soil and groundwater, the soil and water have to be managed differently. The soil has to be segregated, sampled, and based on the sample results, if it's shown to be non-contaminated, it could potentially be reused as part of the sewer project as it was intended, or it would have to go to a landfill for disposal. And water could not simply be pumped through a filter bag and discharged to the river. It has to go through a water treatment system similar to a municipal wastewater treatment system for sewage and wastewater treatment before it can be discharged to the sewer or to the river. And to incorporate that into the project, there had to be coordination with the Department of Environmental Conservation through drafting of an environmental work plan that outlined how all of this would be implemented in the field, how the soil would be managed, how the water would be managed. So we consulted with the DEC and the contractors and developed a work plan on how to implement this environmental portion of the work. got approval from the Department of Environmental Conservation on the process, which included a discharge permit and parameters for how to treat water to be able to be discharged to the river. On top of that, there's monitoring that has to be performed with work that's associated with state Superfund sites, and one portion of that is community air monitoring. So for this segment of the sewer work that normally would not have to do any type of air monitoring because there's the potential for contaminated soil and groundwater, and particularly the potential for contaminated soil. As part of the excavation, there could be dust or vapors emitted into the air. So there has to be a community air monitoring program that consists of monitoring stations around the excavation that monitor for vapors and monitor for dust. So as part of that excavation in this area, there has to be this added monitoring for the community. And in addition, for the workers doing the work, there's special training through Occupational Safety and Health Administration that has to be done for workers who work in contaminated material. So a normal construction crew that would do sewer work that doesn't necessarily need to have this type of training, that had to now be incorporated in just for this segment of the work. They had to have an appropriate trained crew. Either they had to get the training or bring in a separate crew that had that appropriate training. So this all got summarized in an environmental work plan that was prepared and submitted and approved by the DEC. And then to implement it, there had to be coordination with the contractors to get change orders for, this would be out of scope work that was not part of the original project. So we had to get pricing and plans from them on how they would implement this work plan. Did they have the crews? Did they have to get the training? Did they need to bring in additional equipment? For water treatment, had to prepare a design of a water treatment. We had to review the submittal, make sure it met the requirements of the permit that we now had from the DEC. And there was added coordination because this work in this area is being performed by two contractors. So there's a contractor doing the sewer work and there's a contractor doing the pump station work. And one aspect of the work plan dealing with water, we wanted to avoid having two contractors with two treatment systems treating the same water, having duplicate costs, so trying to coordinate that so that we could have one treatment system out there between both contractors. So that involved coordination between the two contractors. And the current status right now, if you're down by Lyman Street, the pump station work has begun. They're excavating. You'll see there's a blue tarp covering excavated soil. When the excavation was underway, we were doing the community air monitoring. And there's some storage tanks out there so that this contractor is storing water that they're accumulating in these storage tanks so that when the next contractor comes, they're going to supply the treatment system so that there's only one treatment system treating all the water for both contractors. And the contract two, or the contract one that is the sewer work, not the pump station work, is scheduled to resume on September 23rd. Currently, when this environmental portion came up and these plans had to be developed, the contractor moved their crew to a different project so they could keep them busy in the meantime, and they're scheduled to come back on the 23rd, which is about a week and a half, to resume the work. And that's the summary I have of the environmental aspect associated with the project and the current status, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Board, any questions first? It's very thorough. Yes, Kevin.
Have you started any of the monitoring of testing, any monitoring of the air or any testing of the soil or water yet?
We have done the community air as part of when the excavation was going on, and there was no what we would call fugitive dust or vapors escaping the work area. And the soil that was excavated it is going to be tested by laboratory, but as it was excavated, it was screened with a handheld instrument that can monitor for vapors or volatile chemicals, and those were all not detected during that. So there is a potential that the soil that was excavated may not be contaminated to the point that it needs to be managed in a landfill. That sampling could determine that it could be reused on the project if it is clean. But because of the proximity and the direction of groundwater and the potential for it to be contaminated, and it is in the overall work area of the DEC's investigation of the John Street Superfund site, that's what had to be incorporated into the work. But no, there's been no testing of the soil and water yet for this project. the John Street site has been tested separately.
Yeah, but it's possible that the footprint of that contamination doesn't go that far.
It is possible.
Yeah. That's where I was going,
Yes.
because it will help define that footprint, right?
Yes, and there is coordination with the DEC because they do have separate monitoring wells as part of their investigation of the John Street site itself around this work area that the sewer work has to kind of navigate between and not disturb.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? All right, thank you. I know we've spent so much time talking over the past couple months, in particular trying to make sure everything moved ahead. Getting the contract 2 working on the pump station was a big step, and we got that, and they've been doing work this week. And we have a couple more pieces to put in place, and then we should be solidified for contractor 1 coming back to continue the sewer work. Now, that's where they're going to be digging up those 3 roads down there. And that will actually bring the work closer to the John Street location. So I'm interested to see how the air monitoring goes with that. But all right, great, Andrew. Thank you very much for coming out, for giving that explanation. Andy, when I talk about the sewer project, let me just finish off the sewer project now. It wasn't supposed to be my first update. The reason we have the request for a bond resolution increase is, in a sense, 2 parts. We'd hoped to get all of the prices figured out for the cost of the additional work related to the environmental hazards from the John Street site to Honeywell, and work out some sort of agreement with Honeywell where they would pay for the additional costs. We've been in the process of doing that. We haven't quite gotten there. We'd hoped to have that sort of lined up so that we know that Honeywell will be putting forth the money, but we haven't been able to get that done yet. We've made a lot of progress. Even today there was progress made. But EFC, who is financing this, and MRB, our engineering firm who's handling this, is a little bit concerned that the additional cost. The additional cost of this will, in a sense, exceed what we have set for our bond resolution because of the extra cost of the environmental mitigation that has to happen. Even though we may possibly soon even have a deal worked out with Honeywell, we're still recommending that we increase the bond resolution. It currently was set at a maximum of $5.25 million to cover the entire project, with the estimates of the hazardous mitigation somewhere in the 400,000 range, I think. Do you remember if it was somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000? I think
it was in my recollection.
Yeah,
the low 4s.
Okay, we want to increase the max is 500,000. And Andy, if you want to hop in and say anything else on that, this is not us committing to spending this money, and we have had good communications with Honeywell, Honeywell's engineering firm ERM, who's handling the site, as well as their attorney. So we feel like things are in a good place, moving well that way, but we still want to make sure that there are no other hurdles in the project.
Andy, and if this is a mayor, something for executive, or not, just pause me, but is this money we are expected to be reimbursed from Honeywell?
Well, we're working on that.
Okay.
So,
Because I know they've been willing to help in the situation.
The mechanism's still being negotiated.
Okay.
But there are a few options
Yeah.
or a few methods of payment that have been discussed. So the mayor's correct. It's really an issue of juggling a few balls at once, and unfortunately, there's many in the air right now on the project.
Yes, there are.
And it's really a timing issue. There's EFC financing in place. There's a state grant in place. There was the existing bond resolution in place. And this project goes back several years. So when EFC was first involved and they did approve financing, it was for an amount lower than, well, I'll take a step back. The EFC financing that was already approved was based on the estimate that was done several years ago.
Yeah.
So when it was clear that the project would come in over budget, this board entertained increasing the bond resolution to $5.25 million. That was approved. That would have covered the sewer work up until the environmental issue was identified.
Yeah, and that number was after we had rebid the
After
initial
we had-
project into the 2 split phases to
That's
save.
correct.
Yeah.
And so EFC did not move forward to amend their financing based on the 5.25 million estimate.
Right.
We anticipated that that would all come together and we would have already closed the EFC financing this year. The environmental issue was identified earlier, in April of this year. Everything got put on hold, including the EFC closing, because they knew there'd be increased costs. We're now at a point, though, where the amount of money that's been spent on the project is approaching the amount that EFC originally approved for financing. So that number has to be increased. But to cover all of these costs, absent a Honeywell agreement in place yet, EFC needs the village to say, we're increasing the full amount of the project. Later in the meeting, you'll review the proposed bond resolution, but what's included in this one is the financing ultimately required would be reduced by the amount of any state grant, and we know there's a state grant here. And language has been added so that the financing would be reduced by the amount of any funds received from third parties. So this is really a measure, you are committing yourself to the increased costs, but there are things in place to try to address those costs. And I can confirm with the mayor, we have had extensive discussions. Sterling Environmental's been working with Honeywell's environmental contractor, ERM, on these costs. And I've been dealing with ERM's counsel, and we've had very positive discussions on this.
Yeah.
The village is already in receipt of a letter from Honeywell when this issue first arose, indicating that they will address these incremental costs associated with the environmental issues. We're just working out the mechanism for that. And we had to, of course, get the actual dollar amounts. And that took
Right.
a little bit longer over the summer than hoped, but that's not unusual.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the sewer project? Okay. Quick update on the highway garage. We did have a delay with some confusion about the proof rolling and compaction test that had to be performed. The village had put out some material. Then we were told that material shouldn't actually be out when they came to do the initial testing, so we had to take it off. There were a couple weeks of delay, but the basic gist is we're past that now and things are going up. So if you guys haven't been down there in the past few days by the highway garage and by the ball fields, things are happening. I think tomorrow they're doing water and sewer lines into the future building. So that's just my update there. In terms of the Woodsbrook buyout program, we have we're working with the state, going through all the proper procedures. We hit one little snag when we sent our material into SHPO, where they had some questions and brought up some issues, and we've just been drafting a response to them, which should go out tonight or tomorrow. Once they get approval for that, we as a village board still have to do a seeker declaration for this project. And those are, I think, the last 2 steps
So, yeah, so what
before the
happen-
state can give final approval, and then we...
Right, and we can inform the board and the public. Sterling's also assisting
Yeah.
us on the environmental review for the Woodsbrook buyout project, completing the environmental assessment form. As part of that, the potential archaeological and historic impacts of the buyout need to be reviewed by SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. They've raised a few comments in that review. Sterling made the submittal to SHPO. As the mayor said, there'll be a response to those comments sent out. Once SHPO signs off on the project, which we anticipate, I would not anticipate any
Yeah.
issue with SHPO. Then the board will need to complete seeker on this, review the environmental assessment form that will be completed by Sterling, adopt a seeker determination. Once that's done, the environmental record on this will go to the state for sign off. Finally, when that happens, we'd be in a position to move forward and start scheduling closings.
Yeah.
We can let the board know that a number of contracts have been executed. We've prepared preliminary closing packages.
Yeah.
Those have been sent to the state. Those have been reviewed by the state and accepted by the state.
Yeah.
So
when we get this last approval from SHPO, and again, just echoing what he said there. The things they brought up are things that I understand what they're saying once we explain to them the whole process of what's going on and clear up some things. I don't see any issues. State Historical Preservation Office. Were you testing me? You knew that, didn't you?
Yes, but I don't think many people out here do.
It's just fun saying SHPO, you know. And once that's done, I think we will need a special meeting to do the seeker.
Do the seeker determination so that we can timely get that into the state for review, so we can then hopefully thereafter move forward.
Yeah, because we have several people who are eager to close, and they're waiting on.
They have other closings.
Yes,
in other houses.
yes. So as soon as I hear, I'm hoping maybe later this week we get to hear. Maybe, I don't know, but we'll.
You're being optimistic.
I'm always being optimistic. I
And
know.
is SHPO involved because it is a municipality making the purchases, or?
No, it's always part of the seeker review.
Okay.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with the state funding, or it's
So I'll be looking to schedule a special meeting sometime. Once we hear, I'll reach out to you guys to just basically to perform that so we can move forward, get closer to the closings. Other village-related business. I attended the Community Participation Working Group meeting, which is open to the public, and to get the latest information, updates from DEC, DOH. EPA is present there in terms of sites, and one of the interesting things that the group is doing is they're kind of making decisions on what do we want to hear, what are people asking us about that we want to bring in experts on. So I encourage you to get to those meetings. One of the frustrations that came up was that they were doing work in the John Street area, additional work, but people didn't get knowledge of it. And that we were told DEC was going to send things out in the mail. They didn't for some reason. Like, they sent it off to whoever in the state does the printing and mailing, and it didn't happen. So we have a bunch of extras that were delivered yesterday, I think, for us. One of the things they had talked about, the possibility of having the alternate water supply study, which is the next big thing we're waiting on rolling out, be presented either at the SIPWIC meeting or at a village meeting. We had talked about the possibility of late September at the next meeting, but DEC has said that that will not work yet. There's more things they have to go through. So at this point, we don't know exactly when it's going to come out. It still sounds like late September or more likely early October. But trust me, because this is such a big deal and such an important explanation to sort of how things are rectified for the future, I will make sure to blast all the information when the time comes that meeting is going on. And that also is the alternate water supply study. That's my update there. In terms of the EPA stack testing, we still do not have any data yet because they are still doing whatever they do at the Office of Research and Development within EPA. It's been brought up several times. It's been brought up as a concern several times. My last conference call with EPA and DEC and DOH, I very strongly brought it up, and the next day the commissioner sent a support letter to EPA requesting that. So I was glad to see that the state heard that, and again, as soon as we get information on that, we'll be putting that out there as well. Any questions on those? Okay, and the last couple things I wanted to say is on September 4th, we had the situation down actually on the other side of the tracks behind the sandbar on John Street, where we had a line down which caused a couple flaming lines, I guess we would say. I just wanted to thank all the local and regional responders who came out. We had several fire departments, Hoosick Falls, North Hoosick, West Hoosick. Who else did we have there, Chief? Pittstown. There was another one, too.
Rentschler County Emergency.
Rentschler County Emergency was there. Our local police were there.
The mayor was there.
Yeah.
We seen at Cambridge, but they weren't there. It was somebody else that just came.
Okay, but it was an impressive response in the speed and the efficiency of how things work. And as a guy who spends his day trying to get groups working together to produce something, it was just a really awesome thing to see. So thank you for everyone who's involved in that response. There were no issues with injuries. People who were living locally were able to get questions answered and get things taken care of. It was just really, really great to see. I know Mark was out there as well as the code enforcement guy who had to. You were probably there a while doing nothing for a while, and then they finally could.
Yeah.
Eventually
I got involved.
Yeah, eventually got involved, but you were there as well. So thank you everybody who's involved. Our our DPW and water guys are not here right now because they're actually working on a water
break.
line break up on Carr Street.
Yes.
So I did want to mention that. So thank you for them. Yeah.
Wait, so they're doing they were
Uh,
doing flushing up in that area. That's why we had some groundwater in
Yes.
that end of the village today.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Monday and Tuesday.
Yep.
Yep.
And going back to the GAC filtration system, we spent a lot of time trying to get CT Mail to come and do the fix on the what's the tank?
Rensselaer?
No, in the GAC building.
The balance tank.
The balance tank, and it took what seemed like heaven and earth moving to finally get them to come out and do their thing, and they checked the welds and everything was good, and it's leaking again. We noticed it about a week and a half ago. The county knows, the state knows, the state has reached out to CT Mail, so that's going, but I just want to make sure people know that it is leaking again. It's not an issue in terms of the water system working or not working, it just means that a tank
It's not
internally.
humidity. Like they're gonna
And it's not humidity because the dehumidification system is online. So that's good. All right, so that ends with my updates.
Mayor, before you go to the people we heard, can we sign off on these guys so they can?
Let's finish. Let's do the people to be heard section first. The people to be heard section. Just want to get an idea of who would like to speak. Just one. Okay. As a reminder to everybody, meetings are recorded. They're posted online later, public documents. So, and as you already know, please state your name and address for the record.
Kevin Allen, 5421 State Route 7, Hoosick Falls, New York. Your EPA stack testing of McCaffrey Street, you're looking for qualitative. I don't believe that they're doing any quantitative testing out there.
They are not.
But what is going to be important, and I think they already have this information, is where's the fallout from the stack emissions? Whatever is coming out of those stacks is going to go up into the air, and then it's going to come down. And it's going to come down somewhere.
Yep.
Where?
It's a good question.
And that's a question that DEC already has answered, because when they did their off-site testing, because they already had their testing on-site, they chose particular sites to go out and monitor. And if you notice, they went east, south, southeast, and a little bit. They didn't go north. They didn't go north very far because they knew, because of the way the prevailing winds go and what direction, they knew where to test. So they know where the fallout is going to be. It's just a question of getting them to commit to that.
Absolutely, yep.
You remember them coming here and saying, this is where our off-site testing is going to be. So they chose specific sites. They didn't go north.
Well, north isn't due north the River Road site, or is that a little bit west?
That's west. But by north, also think about the
that's
topography too of the river valley. There are hills in the way that aren't going to go very far north beyond Second Ward.
Which
Because-
is exactly my point. They
No,
know
you're
where-
not wrong.
Right.
Where what?
But that is one of the logical next questions from this. One of the logical next questions I brought up on the phone call is, if the tests are only qualitative, not right now, and not quantitative, and that it's going to identify things but not say how much of that's coming out, when are those tests coming?
Well, when you talk parts per trillion, I mean, people want to know if they've been drinking the water with it in it and breathing the air in it too.
Right.
Because when the fabrics were being made there, and there was 6 or 7 towers, you know that the air was low there.
Oh yeah.
It had to be. So what's the fallout area?
Yep. And how do these air emissions compare to the air emissions back they're using pre-2003 when all the
Well, and also, Vermont did it up at ChemFab, right? And that was what part of the settlement was, and why the settlements were in the area that they went, is because they tested there and they used it. And they're the same towers, or extremely similar to the ones that were in Hoosick Falls, because the people that were part of Dodge Fibers, when it was bought out from Oak Industries, created ChemFab.
Yep.
And they used the same technology.
Yep. Which is now in Merrimack, New Hampshire.
Correct.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? if students want to,
Why don't we
yeah.
do my report next?
Oh, that's a great idea. Hold on for a minute.
Oh, come on, this is my last
This
chance
is
to
a
let
very,
these guys get
this is
on
a
here.
very good report too, I must add.
Better to be on this side of his report and not on his report.
True that. And actually, that's one thing I forgot to mention in my updates was the amount of work you guys did in response to the vandalism that made news. I know a lot of people were talking about it at school because people were coming up and telling me, "Hey, I heard it was them," and I'm just like, "What did I?" But so thank you guys for what you guys have been doing with that.
It's not always easy.
Let's skip right to the police report, Chief.
For the month of August, there was 147 calls. For the same time last year, total calls for the year were 873. Total calls for 2019 were 1,086, so there's a substantial increase in the number of calls that were down. Total arrests for 2019 were 105. Last year at this time there were 102. The total arrests for August were 7. Those calls range from domestic incidents to EMS, animal complaints, fraud complaints, and property damage. Some of the arrests that were made last month were for criminal possession of stolen property, grand larceny, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, driving while intoxicated, some warrant arrests, and an assault arrest. What I wanted to, and I'm glad they're here, is because, and I'm not saying you guys are in this position or anything, there's a lot of things going on here that in the village at different times that young people are either involved in or are not involved in. I don't want you to think that we're all bad people here. That's not the case. We have a great community with a lot of great people, and so a lot of things get said and done sometimes. And the truth of the matter is, you got to ask the questions and you get the truth. Some people will just create rumors. And in this past incident, there was a lot of rumors going on about what was going on, and a lot of people think that these young men came in front of a judge, and this is one of the reasons what I wanted to let you hear is that people think that they went in front of the judge and they walked out the door. That's not what happened. There's a thing that was passed last year. It was called bail reform. It was passed by the state legislature that now requires the judges and the courts to look at bail a little bit differently than they did in the past. Bail was always put on an individual to ensure that they would return at their next court date. That has been changed a lot now, and it's been changed so that it says, well, you just can't use bail as a punishment, so you got to look at a lot of different factors to look at to ensure that the person is going to come to court. So these individuals were placed under house arrest. They were placed under what we call released probation, where they have to go down to probation and they have to have an ankle bracelet put on. I don't know if you ever seen anyone with an ankle bracelet or have ever experienced an ankle bracelet. It's not a real nice thing. It monitors you wherever you go. So if you go to the store, it tells us that you're at Cumberland Farms. If you went to Colony Center, it would tell us that you were at Colony Center at the time you were there. So they got an ankle bracelet put on. They also have to blow into a breathalyzer 10 times a day, not within a certain time that they want, but the times that probation tells them to do. So they may have to blow in it at 7 o'clock in the morning, they may have to blow in it at 9 o'clock in the morning, they have to blow in it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, at designated times. And those times are recorded by probation and forwarded to the judge. So the judge will have those records that will indicate that every time that they blew into that alpha sensor, that it was going to show a 0-0, meaning that there was no alcohol acknowledged in their system. If they did have a drink, even if they tried to have a drink in between those hours, it would show up on that. And if it shows up on that, the judge is then going to say, you violated probation, and now you can go to jail. So it's a way to keep them under control and to address maybe an issue that they have that they don't want to acknowledge, or maybe they are going to acknowledge it. They use it not just on these particular cases, we use them on DWI cases, we use them on pretty much any case that comes before the judge. And it doesn't mean to be a young person. There's an individual that's I think he's around 60 years old, that was arrested for DWI. He has to blow into this every day as well. It's a cost that they have to pay for that ankle bracelet, and they have to pay for that elbow sensor, so there's a cost involved in it, okay? So when you see people saying that people get off easy, I don't know if that's all that easy. I mean, they have to be monitored that time, and they also have to be in the house by 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and they can't leave the house until 6 o'clock in the morning. And again, that's monitored by the ankle bracelet.
Is that the house arrest, Bob? Is that that's what the house
considered
arrest
house
entails?
arrest.
Are they allowed to go to work?
They're allowed to go to work. If they choose to go somewhere, like a family event, they have to check in with probation and get permission from probation to do that. And I'm not just singling out these individuals here. I'm glad you're here, because this means if anytime you come before a judge and he sets bail on you or sets these stipulations, it can be done to anyone. It doesn't mean just a kid. Like I said, the 6-year-old man, who was a very strong drinker, as the judge was talking to me, all his readings have come back 0-0. So he is really trying to keep himself straight too, because he doesn't want to have to come in front of the judge and have the judge say, you violated probation, now you're going to go to jail.
And Chief, this is the situation until it gets to court, correct?
This situation will stay with these individuals until the court case is completely rectified. And believe me, court cases can drag on and on and on. They can go from a quick week to over a year. And during that time, that individual or individuals will have to follow these instructions. So it's a new way of not setting bail, but controlling the situation of the individual.
And Bob, based on the offenses as far as the felonies and the misdemeanors, what are any types of the punishments? I mean, what could these kids be facing? Or I shouldn't say they're kids, because they're not kids, they're young adults.
A misdemeanor is any time that you're found guilty of a misdemeanor, is anything less than a year being served at the county jail. A felony is anything over a year, and it's served at a state penitentiary, state facility. That means not at Rentschler County, but you can go anywhere in the state that the court's sending you or have an opening. And that's not dictated by, hey, I live in Hoosick Falls, so I really can't go downstate. If there's an opening downstate and you're classified, you go downstate.
And there's also more charges in other jurisdictions that are possibly
yes.
forthcoming, which can add to the already. Yeah, there's Vermont, correct, and
Vermont,
county.
the sheriffs and the state police.
No, it's Vermont.
And
It was in his
we
press
keep on
release.
focusing on this situation, which is good,
it's in the
because it
press
seems to be that it's the highlight of everyone's conversation. When an investigation like this starts, we start here and then we work our way out. And as we start reaching out to other agencies and speak to other agencies, and they discover that something happened in their community that matches up with our community, we start comparing notes, we start comparing evidence, and little evidence that we find here and there gets put together and it becomes big evidence. So in this particular case, there was situations that happened in Bennington, Vermont, that happened outside the village, so that's where the state police came in play, and the Rentschler County Sheriff's Department. So yes, there's pending charges, and as we sit here, I just received another charge of another person that came in, so there'll be additional charges from our office that are gonna be placed on that person as well. And keep in mind, it's not just the cost of the damage of the cars, it's the cost of the attorney fees that these individuals will have to pay. And when you're facing felony charges or misdemeanor charges, the attorneys, there's a lot of money involved in this. That this is not something that they can handle one day in front of the judge. This is probably gonna go on, and that means every time you meet with that attorney, it's, I don't know what their fee is, maybe $250, $300, $400, whatever he assesses per hour, and that can add up real quick.
It's a lot of heavy stuff for
Some
Someone in
individuals
there.
can hire their own attorney,
as a young
and then
adult.
some individuals cannot
A lot of
hire
heavy
their own
stuff.
attorney,
Lots of people
and
have
one will be
certain
appointed to them by the courts, but then that person is, has to pay a certain fee to that attorney as well.
Any questions for the chief? Board or?
Yes.
Maybe this is a stupid question, but like if someone else blew into their breathalyzer, would you know?
It's not a stupid question. Yes, because some of these, I wanna say yes and no, but some of these, and I think more as time passes, they get, technology gets better, they're photographed when they do. so we'll see the photograph of the individual
Wow.
that's blown into it. That's like drug testing, urine testing, and things of that, when we come up and start testing on that, there's a lot of tricks that people try to play, but there's technology that always seems to be out there. You might be able to get away with it once, but I doubt it.
Kevin?
You're testing it for a breathalyzer for alcohol, but is there any other substance abuse that you can, that's
Yes.
gonna be tested?
The probation can order an individual at any given time to test for drugs, at any time. It doesn't, they can
Not
say to
know that.
them,
Wow.
they can walk into probation tomorrow and they can say, okay, we're doing a drug test on you right now, without them even knowing or preparing for it, so, yes. It might sound mean,
Sounds great.
it might sound mean to you, but it's,
Yeah.
the situation that's, laws are changing all the time, and we have to change with them. And as those change, and there's a new law that's out there, it's called raise the age, where a 17-year-old has to be treated as a juvenile now, and as they get older, up to the 18, it goes up to 18, where before an 18-year-old had to be treated as an adult. Don't get fooled by that, okay? Because even though you're 18, you gotta be treated as a juvenile. Things can change real quick. So don't get fooled by raise the age. And now, since these new laws are on the books, we're starting to see them, we're starting to experiment with them, and they're gonna start changing, so they can go back the other way too, so. It's not something that's gonna be here for, I doubt that this raise the age and the bail reform is gonna stay intact, I think eventually.
More questions for the chief?
Chief, it's probably worth also mentioning that a lot of private citizens have security cameras that they're willing to
Yes.
share footage of, where you have multiple trails of people doing things.
Wherever you go.
We are watching.
Wherever you go. And I had videos that people were presenting to us, and you don't think at 2 o'clock in the morning anyone's watching, but.
Well, even non-victims, a neighbor may have one.
Non-victims,
A neighbor, someone down the street, there are people who, yeah.
And a lot of people called up and said, hey, I've got a video, maybe you wanna come see it. The local stores were checked, the banks were checked, a lot of locations that we knew that had videos, we were on top of it, we checked.
Mhm.
But other citizens were calling and saying, hey, you can check this video as well.
But I'm just looking at these numbers you gave for 2019. Based on the numbers, we're gonna average. You're gonna end up over 1,600 calls. You're averaging right now 135 calls a month.
Correct.
Last year we averaged like 110 calls a month.
Yeah.
So it's like
There's
25 calls extra per month. That's a pretty good
Just
increase.
tonight, as we come in here, which, you never know when you come in, I mean, we're already at like 4 different calls that we're handling, as well as another situation that we're handling, so there's a lot of activity that's going on in there right now that, probably next month, I would anticipate that those numbers are gonna be a
Oh,
little
yeah.
higher than what they were.
Yep.
last month. And Mark, if I could, I wanted to come to the board meeting last night too, because I'm sure there was questions concerning the outside calls on these. But I was tied up on the arrest there, but
No, there
next
was no
month-
question.
Okay, next month I'll be there. If there's people that wanna have any questions, I'll be there next month.
All right, looking for a motion to approve the
Motion.
police report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Students, if you want to pass up your
You can give it to any one of us to sign.
Take a quick minute or two to get
Thanks,
these
Chief.
signs. Where do you guys need signatures?
I'm not signing
I
yours.
forgot mine.
Kidding.
Not sure where I signed, so I'll just sign the bottom.
Bye, trouble. Sure. You're welcome.
She forgot hers, so can you sign the agenda?
There you go.
She can grab an agenda, yep.
Yeah, grab the
take
agenda
an
and let the
agenda
mayor
and I'll-
sign
Go.
it.
Yeah.
It's your brother's home.
Oh, no, he's back to girlfriend's house till 9 o'clock.
Oh. Get him home at 9. RDC.
There you
Same
go.
way. There you go, sir.
Agenda signed here.
Chris?
Yeah, you're probably gonna run out of agendas.
You could have brought it to homeroom.
I probably could have. There you go. Anybody else need anything signed?
There you go.
Thank you.
Good.
Oh my goodness. I sign your passes
must be
all
in
the
van.
time.
Come
Yeah,
and
I
keep
know,
up.
but that's your
But I get a
signature.
I do a lame signature in
You
school.
should.
You do an at sign.
I do.
Show up.
All right.
All right. See
All
ya.
right.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
You was
so
actually
quiet now.
Half of my homeroom was here.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
my 11, 6 are seniors.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh.
And 6 of them were made, yeah.
That's great. All right,
Good.
Okay.
backing up a step, treasure report.
Alright.
You guys got the reports ahead of time, which has been working.
that's
Thank you
great.
for that
Thank you.
suggestion.
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Anything to ask? If not, Ben's not here to say anything. So, if unless you have questions, looking for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Oh my gosh. Vanessa Craig. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. I would expect it. We'll hear more about the Badger software, which is going to be the software and hardware that reads the water meters. I expect we'll have more to report at the next meeting because I think we just got those in the mail yesterday.
It's gonna make your life way better. Right?
Yep. Code enforcement. Mark.
Chief took all my time.
It's a very detailed report, Mark.
It is. It's
Yeah, actually,
outstanding.
the report you sent to was fantastic.
And I forwarded on the list of zombie properties.
Okay, yeah, and that, I probably take off like the red tag property list that I have on this report now, and, you know, the vacant property list, and just keep it that one, we'll have that one report, and I'll have all those on there, and then, that's it. I was, you know, no point trying to maintain 2 different lists.
Absolutely not. Save
Yeah.
your time typing.
No.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and that, the list that I did put together was at the request of Kevin, I think, a couple of months ago.
Yep.
If anybody were to want to do a deeper dive into any of those properties, that list gives all the information that you need. You know, tax ID, parcel, bank, what information I have for the bank.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
You know,
report.
it's hard.
Yeah.
The banks don't want to be known. They don't want you calling them, you know. So, you know, there's no way I could dive any deeper and have time to do anything else. You know, so I did provide the information that would be needed though, if somebody wanted to take it.
Okay.
We have, I think it came out to 46 properties. The other thing I would say is that I'm not saying that I have all of the vacant properties on that list. If you're aware of some vacant properties you think should be on the list, most of the ones that are on the list I have cases on. That's how I got to know about them. Not all of them have a case. I mean, we could add a property there just to monitor. It doesn't mean I have to have a case open. You know, I think I spotted one today down on, I want to say Center Street, maybe 39th Center. It doesn't look like anybody's there.
Is that the next block up from me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Michaela's old house?
I'm not
No,
sure.
no, that's the other side of the road.
So it just looked like it's starting to get overgrown, and it doesn't look like there's anybody there, so I'll take a closer look at that one just to see. So, you know, I can keep adding to the list, not necessarily having cases on them, but.
Mark, it might be worth just to throw it out there on the list, indicating if it's more than a single unit, if it's a 2-family, 3, etc., because the village is zoned as single family. If it's used for not used for the non-conforming use for a year, we can then revert it back to its original purpose. So if it was 4 apartments, it's abandoned for a year, and we can revert it to a single family. So if they end up at tax auction or bank, we can eliminate some of these undesirable apartments, correct? By changing the.
However, it would
Yeah.
be marketed, let's say, it still would need to comply with the zoning.
Right.
You lose your non-conforming use status, you have to comply.
So just as it might be useful to keep an eye on some, if we know there's multiple units, to say, hey, this one's been repeatedly bought by absentee landlords or slumlords, let's revert it back
That
to a
was the
single
whole,
family, so when it
It
gets
was-
sold at
it was
auction, it's
like this one.
marketed as that.
Yeah.
And
You have to be careful with that, I think.
well, the zoning laws, the village is, no, that's the law. That's the zoning laws of the village is single-family homes. So those are non-conforming. If not used for the non-conforming purpose for a year, that can be reverted.
It would be subject to just reviewing
Yeah.
the zoning law, the district in which it is, when it was last utilized. If it's multifamily, Mark, and are rental units, and that kind of triggers the other requirement for the biannual inspection and the inspection and the permit while it's empty. So,
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, like the River Road property. I'm not sure if it went a year, but it almost went a year. All right, that's a 4-unit.
And I'm talking at this end of River Road, and there's no way you're converting that
Well,
back
Mark,
to
to
a
be clear,
one-family.
that was originally a 4-unit, correct?
Yes.
The one by, yeah,
Yeah,
so
the
its
one-
original purpose was 4, so if it was originally a duplex and now it's 4, we can revert it at least to a duplex,
Maybe not.
based on the
Because
zoning.
some of the residential districts do allow for,
However, the zoning does say the entire village is single-family homes. All of those are identified as non-conforming properties. You're welcome to look up the local law.
Well, we
They did
Yeah.
rezone the entire village single-family with the non-conforming. So it's a way to solve a problem we have with some of this housing.
You
Yes.
have to look at the zoning law and figure out
And
what
each
zoning
district.
district.
Yeah.
what
Also
zoning
have to
district
determine
it sits.
when that property was turned into a rental property. But in that case, it's always been a rental property.
Right.
But,
So that one
but
before
that,
would stand.
it could be grandfathered in as well, based on when the local law was passed, correct? And when zoning was,
Or that
the zoning
can be
law was
reverted.
updated.
Opening a can of worms here.
And then we're not gonna
Sounds
figure
like
it
a
out
couple
here, right?
cans.
No, I'm just saying it's useful info in there. I know we.
But, and I
There's
don't
a lot of
necessarily
issues.
agree with Brian
A lot of
100%
issues.
because I think a lot of it can be controlled by having an active code enforcement officer and being on top of these things, which I don't think that we had for a long time.
Oh, I
It was
agree.
always- You know, I think that can make a difference. And for a long time, a lot of the houses were allowed to be cut up choppy, you know, which is why they put in the
Yeah.
law they put in. I think you have to have a mix of housing stock. You know, some people want to rent. They don't want the responsibilities.
Of owning and paying taxes, you're
Being,
right.
you know,
Correct, but it's the properties I'm talking about are ones that have been split up. If it was a 1-family, now it's 4 or 2, those should go back to single-family because they're are in a cycle of people that are renting them that are not high-quality renters. You know, Jason's done a great job with nice apartments. They are high-quality renters who contribute to the community. We have a lot of places, 3rd Street, you know, we can go take a walk. You know, there's a lot of places in Second
And I
Ward.
can match, and I
So-
can match every one of them with a really nice apartment.
Right.
That doesn't have that.
And the problem with that is you're opening a can of worms and you're gonna spend more money in court than you are in, trying to go back, revert back.
but his position is correct, and it's something that I argued back in the 90s about, was that you need a code enforcement officer to really crank down
Oh,
on some of these
that's
apartments,
given.
because those
Yeah.
apartments will disappear when it becomes not profitable.
Don't make
to
you
do.
and I
Yeah.
agree twice.
As this will not be
But
our
then-
issue
but
shortly.
it goes back to money.
Go look at the
Oh.
zoning
If
law
that
and review
apartment
that and
needs
see what you can do to make
$50,000
community
to
better.
come into code, it's not gonna happen. And those apartments start to disappear,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the problems.
Part of the problem that you have, because you're even seeing it today with some of these abandoned houses, empty houses, is people can't afford to buy these houses and maintain them, fix them up, maintain them for what it costs to heat them and things like that now. So, and we don't have an alternative to convert them to anything else. So it is, you know, you end up with houses just sitting there and not doing anything. You know, that's why I say there needs to be opportunities for different types of, you know, housing. That's why I, you know, what happened over here on 93 Main Street is.
Yeah.
Not on my street.
Everybody feels like that, Marion, I
I'm
know.
trying to come up with a solution to a long-term problem that is already in our code, our zoning law that we could probably look at for some
I don't want
properties.
to see
and-
our zombie
yeah.
house becoming a farm house.
Correct.
No, I agree.
Or
Alright.
you'd probably rather see it torn down and have a bigger yard, or possibly a spot where someone could build something different down the road.
I've always said some of these houses, what you guys, if you were tearing down, was to be making, village parking lots to move cars off the streets
Mhm.
for you,
Yeah.
Or sell to the adjacent neighbor as long as they combine the parcels, you're not losing the tax.
Which has also happened.
So
Yes.
it could
Yeah.
be something to, again, look in as an alternative human resource for you, because we have been in cities and towns and villages that have done that.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
made parking lots, and then you got parking permits that were sold for people to be able to park their cars there, and they would be off the roads.
Mm. Yeah.
And especially you have a lot of these roads that,
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Mark? Looking for a motion to
I'll
approve.
make the motion, accept Mark's report as presented.
Bobby. Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Community service?
I'll make
There
the
it
motion,
is.
we accept it as presented.
Second.
I don't, one of them. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carrie's a very deep and thorough clerk report because they know more than anything that they don't have time to put reports together because they're
Yeah.
busy doing other stuff. But that's pretty much what's been going on.
Taxes, utility bills,
Yep.
I love the very
property
exact
changes.
number here.
5 or 6. It's probably 7 now, but
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Craig.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Highway Department. I know Neil's not here. Do you want to touch upon anything?
No, I'm just gonna say, actually, Neil just sent me pictures and texted me that the water break on Carr Street is a real mess, so.
Good job,
boy.
Yep.
He sent 5 photos and not one of them looks good, so.
We're gonna have to bring hot dogs after.
Way at the end.
Yes,
Almost at the all the way at the
Yeah.
end.
yes.
Right,
It's between 6
Is
and
that
8.
a dead end on it, or is that
5
It's
and
a dead
7.
end.
It is a
The
dead
dead
end.
ends? No, not the
There's
street.
a there's
no,
a
no, no, no,
there's
the
a
main.
spot that used to be there used to be a building on the left near the end.
Before you go to Fairfield.
Well, the end is really Chapone's.
It's right
Yeah, it's
before
right
that.
before his house.
Right before that.
I guess my
Yes.
question was not. I know it's a dead end
On
street,
the
but is that one of
It's
our
right
dead
in
end
front of
mains,
the
or does that loop somewhere?
I
So is
don't
that the
know.
old water
Well,
line?
the hole's big in the pipe.
Yeah. Because you know our
I
water
think
system.
that's a
line,
dead end
That's one of the
street.
few dead ends.
Yeah.
It is.
The main's
Yeah.
a dead end.
Yeah.
Not the street. I know the street.
No,
is.
yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
the main,
yeah.
yeah.
It just is my dad's house.
But I'll make the motion that we accept Neil's highway department
Second.
report as presented.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Brian.
On the list.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Highway Department report passes. I did want to voice my objection that they scheduled the village versus county golf when I was on vacation.
I think that was on purpose. just
Very
so you
angry. I
know.
want to join them next year so that the county has a shot at winning. Okay.
Hey, it was fun. We had a good time.
Well, I know. Sewer Department reports.
I'll make a motion to accept it as is.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
With the note, this county is doing a great job.
Yeah.
We got another almost $15,000
That's
last
right.
month from
Yep.
in the sludge.
Yep. I am interested to hear more about the fallout from the lightning strike that has affected some of the pumps and plants there. So I'm sure we'll hear more from that next time. Oh shoot! I was supposed to get this out, the water report. I got it in the mail. Did I ask you
In
to
the mail?
in the
You did
email?
Post office.
I meant to have Marie print it out to everybody, and I forgot. So my apologies. Here is the water report.
Oh,
Regular maintenance, cleaning of filter units, calibration of chemical feeds, daily rounds, checks, and lab tests. All the normal stuff. They had a monthly bacteriological water sample sent to Bender Labs. Tri-Valley was in for due to the installation early August. We did a meter read on August 6th.
Do we have any update on the communication, the wireless communication from the Rentschler Street tank?
Yes,
What?
we have 3 quotes that they want to talk through with us, and there's also something about there was an MRB conversation. I think that was wastewater with something, but no,
I just wanted to
that's
check in
unrelated.
on that, 'cause
yeah,
that's-
they
that
have
telemetry is
we
important.
we got the 3rd quote recently, and he wants to talk. He and Josh want to talk it through with
Okay.
us. So that'll happen. So New York State DOH did sampling on August 8th and August 15th, and CT Mail also did sampling on August 15th. That is the Water Department reports.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I will forward that to you so you can attach it in. And that is it for reports, I think. Thank you. I never sent out the minutes for the August 13th meeting, so
Marie did.
she sent.
Well, Marie
Oh, you
did.
sent them out. Oh,
Yes.
that's great news. That's great.
And I make
Okay.
a motion to approve them.
I'll second it.
I had looked them over and I printed them out and forgot to say, hey, they're good. Send them on to the board. My bad. Thanks, Marie, for once again picking up my slack.
We know who runs this village now.
That's right. That's right. It's always been the clerks. Yep. All right. You said the motion was on and seconded.
Yep.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you. Trustee committee reports. Kevin and Ben don't have any.
Great report.
Vanessa? Craig?
Nothing.
Brian?
That covered most of it. Should I mention anything about,
You can do it now or at the end.
I don't know, my pending demise?
You might as well mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, so unless there's another meeting this month, this will be.
Well, probably there'll be
Okay.
a special meeting.
So this is my almost last meeting because I purchased a home outside the village by 64 feet outside the village. The corporation line to my property line is 64 feet. So, but I will still be your customer. You're paying you premiums amounts for the water.
Now, here we go
150.
already.
So I'd like to talk to you about that. But no, it's been a pleasure serving, and I guess I'm not going to get too mushy, but don't mess it up, guys.
Well, you're still here, so I'll say all the nice.
So I can still mess.
the nice mushy stuff
But I will
when
still
we.
remain involved with the Greenway.
Yep. I hope
and
so.
With Vanessa, the LWRP, any way I can still remain involved, I will try to do so. Whoever takes my seat better be as loud and as much of a pain in the rear as I am.
Oh, good lord.
We're
Coming
supposed to
out
be
of the
ones to
village,
say
you're
that.
safe.
Big shoes to fill, Brian.
I know. I went to clown college for these big shoes.
So likely at the
Speaking
special
of-
meeting that we have, we'll
Kick me to the curb.
we'll have
Chance for change.
Brian sign off, and I'll do the appointing as dictated village law. Alright.
And also do, if I, at some point bring up the idea of having somebody who does represent the non-village residents that are on the water system, because in a way they are involved with the village in some decisions, whether it's a non-voting or partial voting representative. Because it's more than just Green Heights. I mean, there are, 100 and some odd customers outside the village.
I forget exactly what the
above
number is.
Hovey Ave, with North Hoosick.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
places where the
Johnson
municipal
Temple.
water line extends outside the village boundaries,
No man's
but
land.
Yeah.
and all those, in every single situation they pay like what?
150%.
Yeah, 150%.
So the regular rate's 100%.
The usage bill, not the other stuff.
Right.
I make the
water-
motion, we raise it for Brian to like
Hey!
175.
That was an arbitrary number in 1989 they chose.
All right.
I will be reusing my dishwater for everything.
All right.
Thirsty?
Thank you, Brian. Bobby, you have anything?
I don't have, the only thing I have is a discussion regarding the old business about, as far as the memorial.
You want to wait until we get there?
Yeah, sure.
All right, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. In terms of old business, I have had some more discussions with Chief finally, and I've been the one holding up the process, and I'm going to hopefully touch base with her this week or next week. So definitely by next meeting, I'm hoping to present a plan on what it's going to be, what we're going to do. But the basic gist is I think we're maxed out at, I think we have 20 total hard lines in this building. I think it's 20. It's something like 15 or 20 that we pay a regular line tax and usage on all the time. And we're going to likely transfer to something that is more up to date, which includes more internet usage and cloud-based and a
Are
lot
those
more
POTS
things
lines?
customized. What's that?
Are those POTS?
I think so.
Or Plano telephone service?
Our current ones are.
Yes,
The
they're
new
POTS.
ones won't.
Okay,
Yes.
the new ones will be VoIP. Okay.
Yes.
I just want to say POTS.
And and hopefully I can get her back here to present once we've talked through all the specifics. I know for the police, there's 2 lines that they absolutely need to stay hard line, the POTS, and that's for their it's for some of the processing that they do downstairs with the breathalyzer and something else. I forget exactly what it is, but
And it's gonna be a savings of considerable amount too, right, for us?
it should be, yes.
Like,
For the
based
light,
on the
for the
proposal.
fingerprints and photographs is 1 line, and for the breathalyzers for the 2nd line. But right now, like if I for example, whenever you call the village, you'll find out that the office hours are Monday through Friday when they're not actually Monday through Friday because we're in summer hours. The only way to change that is to actually call someone up and have them log into the
change your
the
own-
thing
your
that's
own
physically
voicemail?
nope.
Oh.
Nope, we have to have them do it.
That's-
So I'm very frustrated by that.
That's crazy.
And then when we
So
have
you
the
got a good voiceover
situation,
guy.
yeah, where the phone lines went down for like that day and our tech support never came, so we got Jackie to come
But
instead.
also too,
Yeah.
VoIP, if the internet is down, your phones will also be out of service.
Right, and
So
that's
the only-
those are the scenarios we need to talk through, and maybe having an extra line just always here in
Just a
case.
POTS line.
Yeah. All right, so that's coming, but I don't have anything else, so I'd like to table that if that's all right. Do we need a motion? Can I have a motion to table the municipal building phone
Motion.
system?
Second.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Bobby.
Okay, as far as the plaque, I looked into, I got, Marie said the girls talked about it, and I showed them the similar one up at, they have for Coach Baker at the community pool. That's a 24 by 16 inch plaque. It's a bronzed plaque.
Okay.
And the cost, quote I got today was $1,183. And that's regardless of the number of characters or whatever, because usually that makes
Oh.
a difference how much you
Okay.
have on there.
Okay.
But the other thing, but we can't do anything until we decide what we're gonna say on there. We need to come
Alright.
up with, I don't know.
Let's
who's
toss
gonna-
some ideas on through email
Yeah.
to come up
Is
with the
that-
wording for the dedication.
But that is the cost you said regardless of
Yeah,
what
that's the lowest of 3. He got 3 quotes for me.
Okay.
It's from TJ Memorials, and he got
Can
three
we make a
quotes.
motion to actually go forward with it once the board comes up with the verbiage for it, so this
Yeah,
can
I think that would be a great idea.
Because
That
I
would be-
selfishly would like to be able
Okay.
to vote on
Yep.
this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, no,
just
I
'cause
agree.
can.
All right, so in that case, we're looking for a motion authorizing the village to move forward with the dedication of the building
The
and
purchase
just the purchase of the plaque.
Plaque.
The purchase of the plaque to commemorate Anne Marie Barnes.
I'll make
Once
the motion.
once the
to
wording
do
is figured
so.
out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd like to make that motion if I can.
Yep.
Brian?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Second, Vanessa. Further discussion?
Thank you, Bobby, for
No, oh no,
taking.
no,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry it took so long, just.
That's all right.
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we can move forward once we have the wording.
Yep, and we just need to, and we also need to know where we're gonna, we can do that through email too, as far as where in the building, what we're gonna do with it. You know, we're gonna mount it on the outside of the building, inside the building. You know, it is weatherproof, so it's not something that
Okay.
needs to be inside the building, just
We
so
need
you
to
know.
use a phrase somewhere on there that she
We
said
kind of-
often.
Which one's that?
Wandered around and picked a spot.
Okay.
There's a lot
Oh,
of
you
phrases
did.
she said to
Okay.
me
Well,
often.
no, I know there's a lot.
Right,
But there are some phrases she used regularly.
We
and I
kind of
think
picked a spot.
that's
Okay, so
appropriate for a plaque.
So,
yes.
can we please include the ladies?
I think you
Rob,
should be wherever she.
when we send the email, can we include the
Absolutely,
ladies
absolutely.
so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I think that you guys will come up with the best location. I think you'll come
Yeah,
up with that
and the
before we do.
verbiage is totally, you know, I mean.
And the bottom quote should be, "If you need it filed, don't give it to the mayor." That's the end quote. All right.
What's the quote?
If you need it filed, don't give it to the
Don't
mayor.
give it to the
That's
mayor.
what it was.
Yeah, someone 100 years from now is gonna what the food is in charge?
Well, you know. All right. Snow Street water line. So I had a complaint from a resident. I gave you guys the packet of the emails. I want to focus a lot less on some of the stuff and basically just focus on the substance of the issue. The substance of the issue is that there were 2 panels, sidewalk panels on this individual.
Wait, I only have the one email.
This is.
Yeah, I don't have that one.
Oh, here.
There's extra one here, Brian.
Oh, thanks.
There's extra ones down here.
Did you
Thank you.
skip all the way down
Sorry.
to the sidewalk instead of the Snow Street line?
Is
Yeah.
that not what we're on right now?
No, you're up at
You're
the.
still on Old Business Snow Street.
You're on Old
water
Business.
Oh,
line.
You're on the
jeez,
water.
I'm sorry.
You're on
I'm
the water.
sorry. I'm on the wrong
Well,
letter.
that's- You're on the
We'll
water.
come back to that in a minute. Sorry.
Oh, right, that's the other.
Do you have the
That's the
extra
other
letter?
email.
Yeah, I gave
So,
everybody one.
We had brought up to
This
us
is-
prior that
yes.
when we redid the Rentschler pump station, 2 water heaters inside houses right near each other, right near the work, had blown. One of the owner's daughters had reached out to us. Unfortunately, the owner, the daughter who reached out, her mother had passed away, and that's what it says in the letter.
Between the
so-
last meetings.
between the last meeting, so I was very sad to see that. But she did give us some of the answers that we were looking for. We weren't sure. She wasn't sure the age of the water heater. The break was definitely within the water heater. No pipes were broken. It doesn't seem like there's any furnace issues right now, but she'll get back to us. We did reach out to our insurance. And Matt Cronin came back because we asked the question of would our insurance cover this situation, and he said that if it was found that the village was at fault for the damaged boiler, the liability should cover that. It sounds like something that would be hard to prove though, and the insurance company would need a lot more information. So I have a feeling that we could probably get close to that, but I don't think we'll be able to get enough information for the insurance to be satisfied to cover it. So the decision is still back to us of do we want to cover the cost of the replacement of the.
And do we have that amount? Because didn't they provide it last month? But I don't.
I'm looking at it right now because I know we had it
No, we
earlier.
tabled. No,
That's
we
right
tabled.
here.
We tabled it last month to get more information.
$807.
What's that?
807.
But also in the, just to point out, in the email too, it does say
Okay.
it is the village
$757.
responsibility to reimburse the broken water heater. I don't agree with that, and I think reimbursing it is confirming that and setting a precedence that,
757.
that I'm not comfortable spending the money on it.
Oh, 757 is okay.
Yep.
Because if we do this, then the next is gonna be the boiler. I mean, I feel like it's setting an unfortunate precedence, especially the way this one sentence is worded in here, and the same sentence was in the other reach out. Again, to reiterate from last month, if there was a major spike in pressure that we caused, not a return to an average normal pressure that's expected, then yes, I would say by all means, but this was pressure going from unacceptable or barely good
Barely
to
acceptable, yeah.
barely acceptable. I'm sorry, misspoke, to the normal level of pressure, and this happened. It wasn't like it was a spike to 110 pounds from, the 70. I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers there. But
Yeah.
if that were the case, I would say yes, but I don't want to set a precedence that people are going to come to us with loose evidence or possible coincidental evidence. I mean, I feel bad it happened, but it also I don't think is necessarily our fault. We were trying to improve the water system.
And Andy, you spoke last time about if this were a claim, how would that proceed and that sort of thing.
If it were a claim, you'd do exactly what you recently did, which is notify your carrier. The board can take some guidance on the position of your carrier, which is if there's evidence to show that the village was at fault or was in some way negligent and this property damage resulted, then the carrier would probably cover that. Short of that evidence, that's really relevant for the board to consider as well. I have to echo what Brian said. It's anyone can make a claim to the village. Your job is to ensure that there's no waste of taxpayer money, that you have to substantiate the claim, the claimant has to substantiate the claim and come in with proof that the village is either at fault or negligent. This is a very sympathetic situation, but I think sounds like, based on the record so far, there's not a lot of evidence that the village was negligent or at fault. It could be the result of an aging water heater. I don't know how many properties would have been affected by
Increased pressure.
But you've had
Up there, it
one or
was in the
two.
20s, I think. That would
So
have.
if you've had 1 or 2 out of 20, that's a relevant factor too. As Brian said, if this had been a substantial increase in pressure, you'd think you'd see more damage than that, but you wouldn't, so.
Well, that is an increase, a serious increase based on the pressure they had up there for all these years. That's the only thing.
No, it's true, but
But it was
Just-
brought
just
online
round numbers?
It went
gently
from
too.
about 20
No,
pounds
brought it
pressure
up,
to
yeah.
what?
Well, they brought the pressure up to, I think it was actually higher than 20. I think it was more 50 pounds, and they got it up to 70 or 90.
No, they didn't have 50 pounds pressure.
Well, let's
But
no,
either
let's
way-
ask
either way
somebody
beyond-
knows the
yeah,
answer.
Either way, beyond what the pressure numbers were.
Well,
is
what
that
are
they-
the highway, or
Oh,
what
no.
are the water guys say? I mean,
Well,
they're the guys who witnessed it.
The first thing is there was an increase in pressure after the Snow Street project was done, and then there was another increase in pressure once the pump station came in. So there were sort of two increases of pressure. Both of our water guys, who I think looked at both of the situations, said it seems obvious that it was an increase in pressure. Now, whether it was a spike out of negligence and increasing in pressure, or just the fact that it was an aged water heater that was ready to go, and the pressure caused that to happen. There's no way to know.
So did faucets leak?
There were two hot water heaters
That
that,
was it.
So
that
just
blew
the hot water.
within almost the exact same timing.
Although those are-
when the pressure was being increased with it.
Just from having to deal with a newer water heater recently, there's a rod inside them that's they call it the sacrificial rod. That if there's hard water, that rod deteriorates first. If that and our water here is a little harder,
That's not necessarily true, Brian.
No, but
believe me, the water is so hard here. The first thing that goes in your hot water heater is your element, not
well, no, but I'm
your
saying,
hot water heater.
but it depends on
The
if
elements go.
it's a propane element or a propane heater. But either way, with that, or just to say, when this pressure comes in, if that was already spent or close to it, that's what would have caused it. When it got up to a normal household pressure.
Look,
So-
none of us are plumbing experts.
Right, exactly. That's
Do water guys are saying that
There was increase in pressure.
there was
But there's-
something happened,
Yep.
and water tanks have a limited life. They don't last forever, and we don't know how old this was. So
Right.
I don't think there's a 100% right or wrong answer. I think there was some, it happened the day that we did the thing. So obviously it's connected.
Yep.
But I also don't think that we're 100% responsible for the cost of a brand new water tank if there was a 30-year-old hot water heater that had 2 years left of functional service life. You wouldn't get, if your pool liner goes, you get it prorated. If it's
Right.
a 10-year warranty and it goes on year 9, you get 1/10 of that pool liner refunded to you. So, you know,
Didn't the village purposely take on a project to increase water pressure?
Yes.
Yeah.
To normal pressure. It wasn't a yeah.
So, I mean, you know,
I don't think we have
Yeah, I
a
think
huge
it's-
amount of responsibility here, but I am sympathetic.
In general, municipalities, when faced with these kinds of claims, have the ability to resolve the claim, what it deems to be in the best interest of the village, overseeing, the taxpayer money. So what Craig says is, do you have the ability to take all the facts and circumstances into account and try to resolve it with the claimant? You do. You have that right under the law. You're also charged with fiscal management. So those are the issues facing the board, and it sounds like you've got as much fact information as you're gonna get. You've had input from your water department.
When I was putting those in with my dad, when he ran his company, every water heater had a plate on it with model number, serial number.
I was just gonna suggest.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things
It's
here is
gone.
we don't know what any insurance company's gonna ask for is, where's the tank?
Oh, yeah.
So that's
I
a
see
hold
the
it
tank.
off.
Yeah.
In the
It's
previous
Yeah.
statement, they said it was already, they didn't have, it was already gone when they.
We also
said
didn't
last
reach
time.
out to who did the work?
Conway.
Conway, it's JP.
So, but at the end of the day, we have no evidence of the age of the tank, and we have no evidence of the lifespan expected. If it's a 15-year-old tank and it's at its life's end or gone beyond it, yeah, if it's way beyond it. So I don't think at this point we can do anything to assist. That's my opinion.
Is that how you guys feel? Do you want to table it until the next special meeting?
I'd like
or-
to table it and give, because first of all, I'd like to have Kevin and Ben here too. A full board should be, that's why we tabled it last month till we find out more of the information.
All right. I can also send her an email just saying, look, we understand the situation, but we also, it can explain like we have reluctance because we don't know the age of the water here, we don't know the
Right.
condition, and at the end of the day, we have to manage taxpayers' money. It's our
I wouldn't
duty.
even suggest you have reluctance. If you're gonna make that inquiry, say, you need to supply us with every bit of information you have, including age of the tank, any repairs.
So we can make an educated decision
Yeah.
based on, yeah.
So you have all the
Okay.
I
information
agree.
in front of you.
Okay.
Before we make a motion to table it, can I ask Andy one question going back to the sentence? What? She says it is the village's responsibility to reimburse for the broken water heater. I am concerned that is foilable. It's in writing. This is an official document. It is an email that came to us
It's a,
that
Brian, it's a claim.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I feel like
It also
When I
could
say
be a
that,
typo.
if-
It could have been, is it the village's responsibility?
oh, no, it's in her other email too. It's something
It's just a
that's
claim that somebody made, it doesn't mean anything.
I just don't like
Yeah.
that that's the way it's worded and okay.
And
So
don't-
not to worry about it.
Don't read the other emails then.
No,
Yeah, don't read the other email you have. If you think this
Okay.
one's, if you think this one's bad, you
So my
better-
water
Wait, hang
heater
on,
goes, I am billing you.
So you're
Guys, let's get
tabling.
through this.
I'd like to make a
I'm-
motion to deny.
Well, where the board ultimately acts on this, Brian, that can be addressed. We'll certainly have something in there that indicates the village, absent any proof of fault or negligent, is not liable. But in the event the board, whatever the action takes, will word that properly. So
Okay.
right now, it's just merely a claim made by a property owner, that's all.
All right. Craig, you were saying?
I think Kevin or Brian was mayor.
I was mayor, I've never.
Bobby.
Bobby was saying we should table this till
Yeah,
next time.
yeah.
I think that's what we should do. We don't have two people here.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I would suggest maybe we think about some sort of small compromise. What's a reasonable compromise?
$0 and 0 cents.
And getting the information.
That's where
All
you
right.
start.
But you're also gonna send an email.
I will send an email
You send the
explaining.
email and saying we're tabled it, we're gonna read, and when we have a full
And
board.
Yep.
ask for the additional information
Correct.
about the
Yep.
water heater.
Yep.
I mean, if it was a
Okay.
5-year-old
All
water
right.
heater and it blew,
That's
need to know.
different. Yeah.
Okay,
Want to make the motion to
I'll
table?
make that motion to table.
Seconded.
Craig,
All in
Bobby.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Passes. All right. It is tabled. Thank you. I don't have anything new on the transfer station discussion, but I know that the season ends at the end of November, so we need to start having this
Yeah,
conversation
I have a
soon.
question about that though.
Yeah.
Household garbage, we take household garbage at the transfer station?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. That's
Why?
What they always have by the bag, so much
It,
by the bag.
likely because there was a point where the town had one and then didn't have one. I think that was before you
No.
came on.
No, the town never had, no. The town has, the town, no.
The town had something but didn't take household
No,
garbage.
the town had recycling but didn't have garbage.
Okay.
Every individual outside the village pays for their own garbage.
Uh,
Haul.
yeah,
You
so if
haul
people
away.
come with household garbage, there's a charge for that.
Cheaper to go to the village transfer station.
That sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is.
that's, I have.
That's one of the reasons
What do you
they're
do with
looking
village
at your
people that
costs.
have household garbage that want to pick up their-
What's that?
What do you do with village people that
Well,
miss?
Yeah,
their
you
work
can either
and
you
wanna
can
pick
take it up there, and if you have extra that doesn't fit in the garbage can, you can take
Sneak
it up
over
there
your
as well.
neighbor's garbage can.
Or if they leave it for
That's what you do.
But that's where it comes down to one of the things we talked about with
Off the record.
one of the things we talked about was trying to figure out maybe a color coding system, and then like you actually have to have the pass on you every single time, even if you know no Chuck forever. That way we can tell if you are in a village or if you are in the town or if you are a contractor in the village or a contractor in the town, because
Well, you should have a
it's different.
resident, non-resident fee.
Yep.
We do.
We do.
We do.
And make,
But it's the
make
same.
sure you're doing.
Here's the same looking. Yeah, that's what we got to figure
Needless
out.
to say, I don't go to the transfer station, but that's why I didn't realize we took garbage there.
Yep.
That's
So you're
Yeah,
taking.
Life changing for you, right?
well, no, it's absurd.
I had a few
Yeah.
neighbors
I
also
think it's
suggest doing
crazy.
that is cheaper than
Then
hiring somebody, but I hired Tam.
So we're going to discuss
motion
that.
to table, please.
Yes.
I need a
Second.
motion to
Motion
table.
to table.
Thank you, Bobby.
Hey, Craig.
And Craig second. All in favor?
I
Opposed? Great. New business. Just have a motion. We're looking for a motion to approve the payment to the town of Hoosick for the assessor position as stated in the August 12th, 2019 intermunicipal agreement.
motion.
It would be 60. And this is as we discussed, $6,500 annually, prorated to $741 a month, and we owe for June 2019 through December 31st, 2019 per the agreement. So the amount we're looking to approve is $3,791.69. And again, this was all laid out
Right,
in
we
the
talked
whole
about it last
assessor
month. Yep.
assessor situation.
Yep.
So, did you say motion?
Yeah.
Did.
Brian did.
All right, Brian, thank you. Second, Craig. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. What do you want me to read specific to the bond resolution, Andy? Yeah, to the page here. Resolution authorizing, subject to permissive referendum, the issuance of an additional $500,000 bond to the Village of Hoosick Falls, Rentschler County, New York, to pay the increased cost of the improvements to the existing sewer system in and for said village. This is what we had talked about earlier. Do you want me to read the resolved section?
I think for purpose of the record, you should read the introductory
Okay.
clauses in section 1 and 2, and then the resolve.
Okay. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Hoosick Falls, Rentschler County, New York previously approved the improvements to the existing sewer system in and for said Village of Hoosick Falls, Rentschler County, New York, the village, including reconstruction of certain existing sewers, construction of new and reconstruction of existing sewer pump stations, and construction or modification of all ancillary and associated improvements necessary for the proper installation, operation, and functionality of the proposed improvements at a maximum estimated cost of $5,250,000. And whereas it was now determined that the maximum estimated cost of such capital project has increased by $500,000 over that previously authorized, and whereas it is now desired to authorize the issuance of an additional $500,000 bonds of said village for such purpose to pay a portion of the cost thereof. Now therefore be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the voting total voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Hoosick Falls, Rentschler County, New York, as follows. Section 1. For the class of objects or purposes of paying additional costs of the improvements to the existing sewer system for said Village of Hoosick Falls, Rentschler County, New York, including incidental improvements and expenses in connection therewith, they are hereby authorized to be issued, subject to permissive referendum, an additional $500,000 bond of the Village of Hoosick Falls, Rensselaer County, New York, pursuant to the provision of the local finance law. Section 2, it is hereby determined that the plan for the financing of such $5,750,000 maximum estimated cost, which class of objects or purposes is hereby authorized thereat, is as follows. 1. By the issuance of the $400,000 bonds authorized pursuant $4 million. Geez, numbers today. By the issuance of the $4 million bonds authorized pursuant to a bond resolution dated January 22, 2015. 2, by the issuance of a $1.25 million bond authorized pursuant to a bond resolution dated February 25th, 2019. And 3, by the issuance of an additional $500,000 bond of said village, hereby authorized to be issued, therefore pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law, provided, however, the amount of bonds to be issued shall be reduced to the extent of grants and funds received from third parties. There are a bunch more sections which we don't need to review for this purposes, and section 10, this resolution is adopted subject to permissive referendum. So, thank you. I need someone to introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Second.
Craig, seconded by Brian. We do need a roll call vote on this.
Trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pine.
Yes.
Trustee Bushner.
Well, I suppose so.
Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Yes.
And Mayor Allen.
Yes.
And we have 2 absent.
2 abstains. Okay, or 2 absent. Okay.
And we'll note for the record, it was passed by the required 2/3 vote, 5 of 7.
Yep.
And
Okay.
it is subject to permissive referendum, so we'll have those publications done.
All right. Great. Thank you, guys. And now onto the sidewalk discussion. So again, as I stated before, I want to focus purely on the substance of the request, although I thought it was kind of informative to give you guys the heads up on what was discussed. It's hard to see in the picture on the back page.
Let's Google Street View.
If you look at the second to last page, what I did is I brought up Google Street View on the property, and you can see the 2 sidewalk portions at the end. They were kind of broken up, but they're still sidewalk.
But it's August 2016.
Yeah, this is
Google
beforehand.
Street
This
View.
is beforehand.
Right, but it just to be so people that can't see this know.
Yep. So prior in this part of the sidewalk, there were basically what looks like 1.5 or 2 sections of sidewalk. They were in rough shape with grass growing up, but they were still there. Neil ran out of, in a sense, time and resources to finish off the sidewalk part of this. So what he did is he came up with an asphalt fill, which acts as a barrier blocking the water that's running off of the curb off of Snow Street heading down what street is that?
Upper Wilder.
Wilder.
It is Wilder, okay. And heading down, the owner voiced his opinion that he did not like the asphalt fill. You can read the words that he used, and accusations thrown. But I basically, as we went back and forth, I explained the situation of our guys have to handle our normal everything we have, plus we have a highway garage, a Snow Street project, a sewer project, and they're often called to Greenway things. We had an insanely full summer, and we're still taking care of repairs in the flood in 2016 to some culverts. This is what we could do now, and we were likely to come back next summer and do the sidewalk replacement.
And was the resident accepting of that answer in the end? Did he accept that as, without all the middle emails, was that final solution accepted?
Ironically enough,
no,
because there have been some emails since. My last email, I misspoke when I offered to, when I said that we're going to discuss replacing the driveway instead of the sidewalk.
Right,
So he was
yeah.
like, hey,
Good
that'd be
job,
cool, but he meant the sidewalk. Yeah, so no. It's hard to tell because that is what Neil had said initially to him. And that's what I had said we would talk about. And I said I figured that we would come away saying, yes, we're going to replace this next summer. So I hope that would be a resolution for him. I'm not sure.
Well, that's what we're gonna do, right?
I mean, that's
we've made a. You and Neil have talked.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna put it back with a piece of sidewalk the way it was.
Yep.
This wasn't part of the Snow Street project. We tore up that section of sidewalk, not the contractors. That's why it wasn't.
Well, regardless if it's a contract or the village, right? I mean,
But why was
they
that
were doing
torn
this
up?
project, so.
Because of the water project.
Yeah, that was Snow Street.
The water project that originally affected that.
the Snow Street project.
Right.
Right.
So we had to tear up part of this to get to a water line.
But the fact is, we left it in better shape than it was, and
Well, he's arguing the better
No,
shape.
he's arguing the opposite.
Well, but
Yeah.
photographic evidence shows
I've been
otherwise.
I've been up there to see it.
This looks better than the broken sidewalk that was less dangerous. But
If
a
it was
lot
my
of
house,
you.
I wouldn't accept it.
No,
Well,
you know what? I make a motion that we
Replace it.
replace the sidewalk next summer.
Okay.
That's
I
my
don't know
easy
whether
enough.
that needs to be a motion or not, but I agree.
Well, I think we do.
I think we can
because
formalize it and say we officially decide this is going to happen next summer and it will happen.
It's that one section of corner.
I just want to clarify
Yep.
2 things here. One saying, this is going to ruin my property value. Many municipalities use blacktop for sidewalks instead of concrete.
There are other blacktop curbs
Yes.
in
Yep.
the village.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yep.
and I'm not comfortable with the wild.
Well, again, I don't.
Uh,
My intention was not to air them out. I want to focus on the substance of the
Right.
issue, and I get it. If I had something get taken out of my property, I would expect it to come back in some form, and it was different. So I get it.
So are we going to put it back broken with grass growing over it? And
No, we're gonna put it back as a sidewalk.
Well, he wants it back the way it was.
No,
You
no.
got Bobby and Craig.
So who made the motion?
I did.
And did you second
Craig
it?
seconded it.
Okay. All in favor? I'm sorry. Any further discussion?
How much is this going to cost?
I don't know. Not that much. Hopefully not that much.
One block of sidewalk, right?
Like a block and a half. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll take a few hours. It'll take some
Can you
supplies.
do the one on the other corner too?
Well, Mark, do you want a favor?
Stay out of it, neighbor. Stay out of it, neighbor.
Okay, and we do.
And there is curb work that has to happen up there. I don't think that's this season though. I'm not sure, but we have Bacchitis building a curb in another place because there's a whole bunch of water that comes into a lawn, and we're installing curb there because that's a huge necessity and it's water heading towards the house.
Just as a part of our
We'll be up there.
50 for sidewalks, and the Google Street View shows that was certainly not in good shape before we did anything. Is this impacting in any way our 50-50 down the road? Or can we just...
Listen, as I sit here, I'm not sure of the full facts of the situation. It sounds like it was a public works project where the sidewalk would have been replaced.
Yep.
It wasn't completed.
Yep.
And what you're merely doing is, it sounds like, is confirming that the project will be completed, that section of the sidewalk.
Yep.
During the next construction season.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Carries. Great.
Are you gonna
Thank you.
reach out to him and
Yeah.
respond back? Okay.
Yep. I can do that in a bit. Any other business to bring to the board? In that case, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No
We
executive?
are adjourned at 8:01. Thank you all.